Well, all the podcasters that have had the president on now, they don't do their court gesture. They don't do it. They just, they suck up to him.
Yeah.
So the comedians that are podcasters that have had Trump on, they're not doing their job. It's tough now because the podcasters have become just ass kissers for the politicians, right? They don't challenge them. They just like, yeah, that's cool.
Alright, so it looks like the actor and comedian Zach Galifianakis, who you probably recognize from the Hangover movies or Between Two Ferns, just went absolutely ballistic on all the podcasters in the Rogan sphere who interviewed Trump before the elections in 2024. Because Zach Galifianakis is also a comedian who's had politicians on his show in the past, as he had Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton on his show Between Two Ferns way back in the mid-2010s. But if you've seen those already, then you'd obviously know that he approached these interviews way differently than Rogan, Schultz, and Theo Vaughn, as his interviews were entirely based around comedy, while the Trump podcasts were pretty much just hours of propaganda slop. So for him to see these so-called comedians who have quote-unquote comedy podcasts doing absolutely zero comedy while glazing Donald Trump to no end was an absolute disgrace and a complete embarrassment to the comedy world.
Well, I mean, we've talked about it. I won't go into it, but I do think that was particularly helpful to you when you did your famous Between Two Ferns interview with Obama, because you're the only person that gave him. I mean, I know that this in any way was just you doing your comedy, but you were so rude as that person, right. And it's hilarious because I don't think anyone's talked to, certainly a sitting president, or even in this time, no one's talked that way.
Well, all the
president
podcasters that have had the president on now, they don't do their court gesture. They don't do it. They just, they suck up to him.
Yeah.
So the comedians that are podcasters that have had Trump on, they're not doing their job.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not the job of a comedian. You are to challenge.
Yeah.
You are to make uncomfortable. You're not to sit there and fake laugh.
Yep.
That is not the job of the court jester.
Yeah.
Period. So there is a difference. Somebody yesterday was talking to me about that, about, political influence through comedy and all that stuff. I'm more interested in the comedy first.
Me too.
Yeah. So right off the bat, you can tell that there's a huge difference between Zach Galifianakis and the other clowns who are just LARPing as comics. Because Zach correctly defines being a comedian as being the court jester, while the Rogan Sphere guys compare it to being the philosopher. Like, that's how much these guys don't understand comedy. So to be honest, Zach Galifianakis is giving them way too much credit here by calling them comedians. Because they clearly take themselves way too seriously, and they think so highly of themselves that they'd never even consider to do their act with the president on their podcast. So before we move along with the Conan interview here, I think it's important to compare Zach's political interviews side by side with Andrew Schultz's and Joe Rogan's, because once you see how different they really are, you'll absolutely know where Zach's coming from. Like, the sheer amount of bootlicking these guys did was just out of this world. I mean, it was almost like they were so starstruck that they pretty much forgot that they consider themselves as professional funny guys.
And then others would say, oh, he rambled. I don't ramble. If I saw the story, what you do is you weave things and you do it. You have to have certain things. You need an extraordinary memory because you have to come back to where you started.
Yes.
A weave is only good if you come back.
They don't give you credit for that.
Yeah, it's true.
Then you could go all the way over here and then get back.
I can go so far here or there, and I can come back to exactly where I started. Now, someday when you don't come back to where you started,
you're Biden.
Then you say,
one of the beautiful things about you is that you freeball. Like, you get out and you do these huge events and you're just talking and you're making. We've highlighted you on the show many times when you did this Biden impression where he's walking around, he doesn't know what he's doing. It's funny. It's stand up. It's funny stuff. But it's like and you were making fun of Elon one time. You were doing an Elon impression. It's great. You have like comedic instincts. Like when you said to Hillary, you'd be in jail. Like that's great timing. Yeah. But it's like that kind of stuff was unheard of as a politician. Like no one had done that.
So the presidential meat riding they put on display here was just beyond human comprehension. And in comparison to Zach's interview with Obama, I think you can understand why Zach's just a little bit frustrated with these wannabe comedians interviewing the president, as Zach's interview was more so how a comedian should really approach these things.
First question. In 2013, you pardoned the turkey. What do you have planned for 2014?
We'll probably pardon another turkey. We do that every Thanksgiving. Was that depressing to you, seeing one turkey kind of taken out of circulation, a turkey you couldn't eat?
You said if you had a son, you would not let him play football. What makes you think that he would want to play football? What if he was a nerd like you?
Do you think a woman like Michelle would marry a nerd? Why don't you ask her whether she thinks I'm a nerd?
Could I?
No, I'm not going to let her near you.
So clearly, Zach's show got these politicians to play into the bit with him, which showed people who didn't even support them back then that they're at least able to drop the act and make fun of themselves for a few minutes. He also didn't try to seriously discuss their policies with them because that's simply way out of his scope. He just did comedy because he's a comedian. Then, on the other hand, with Rogan and Schultz and even Akash Singh, rest in peace, not only did they brown-nose Trump to no end, but they also try to be like pseudo-political journalists, which unsurprisingly just resulted in Trump taking control of the conversation, as they have absolutely zero experience in that field. So Trump essentially took advantage of that and used their huge platforms to convince their massive audience that he's actually just a great guy who wants the best for America. And of course, these hacks never even dared to bring up something controversial for Trump like the Epstein files. Because A, they were way too scared to, B, because Trump would probably get all butthurt about it, and C, is because Trump's team probably gave them a list of things to talk about with him, which is most likely the case and would be super ironic considering they're all about free speech, right? And Zach Galifianakis touches on this idea a little more in this recent Conan podcast. Because in Zach's Hillary Clinton interview, apparently Hillary's team wanted Zach to steer away from mentioning her email controversy, but Zach actually turned them down and said he'd have to mention it with Hillary if she came on, which they ended up agreeing to.
Well, this has been a lot of fun, Mrs. Clinton. We should stay in touch. What's the best way to reach you? Email? Fine, but the comedy has to come first. I remember when I interviewed Hillary Clinton, and I could tell she didn't want to be there, and I totally get that. I get it. But before we had set that whole thing up, they wrote back, well, you can't bring up those emails. And I go, well, we don't have to do the interview. That's fine. We won't do it.
Yeah.
When you tell powerful people no, it's crazy. They were like, okay, we'll do it. Well, you can ask. Yeah. Because it's not that important to me to do it the way they want to do it. You have to, if you're going to come in a comedy, you got to do the way we want to do it.
Also, I see this all the time, and I've seen it for years and years and years and years. People not understanding that if they go to the supposedly vulnerable place and have a sense of humor about it, it is magical for them. People see they have a sense of humor. They see that they can take a joke. I mean, no one walked away from your interview with Obama and thought, wow, you really showed him. He got to be hilarious. He sat there and entered your world of, being intentionally ignorant about who he is, what he does, cutting him off, being insanely rude, and gave it back to you in equal measure. And you looked at it and you thought, this is a great piece of comedy. And I know it reflects well back on the president, and our current president would do well to understand that, if he let himself be the butt of the joke,
it's impossible.
It's humanizing. I know it is impossible.
You wouldn't do it with him.
It wouldn't work. No.
It wouldn't work.
So yeah, I mean, it's just so funny that Joe Rogan and Andrew Schultz consider Trump to be the funniest president of all time, with them even going as far as to say that he could be a comedian in another lifetime, because just like them, Trump gets super sensitive when anyone says anything critical about him. Like he's just not able to joke about himself even slightly. But according to Joe Rogan's definition of comedy, Trump fits the bill. I mean, he loves making fun of marginalized groups, using slurs, and overall punching down, which as you might know by now is just comedy gold for the average mothership attendee. After all, that is right-wing comedy, and according to Zach Galifianakis, it stinks.
There's also the math of comedy to me sometimes where the punching down that the right seems to do something, and I don't want to get political here, but that's not as funny to me as taking on the powerful. Like the math of it doesn't work for me. Like to take on some marginalized people, make fun of that. Listen, I'm all for humor. I can defend it, but that mathematically, that's why you don't see a lot of comedy that comes out of the right. It's hard to do. I'm not suggesting you cannot. It's just difficult to do because of the dynamics.
Yeah.
Greg Gutfeld.
Oh,
what a hilarious comment.
You got him. I don't know if they'll show up to work again.
So he calls out Greg Gutfeld directly here, but this absolutely applies to the majority of the Rogan Sphere comics too. Because when they do get up on stage and do their material, it's a truly, truly miserable experience, as they mostly just punch down with super unoriginal stereotypes that you first discovered in middle school, which isn't even necessarily a right-wing thing. I mean, everyone can be a hack, but this kind of punching down seems to happen primarily with right-wing comics, which most people see as completely backwards and lazy, because it's easier to punch at people who are already down instead of the bigger figures like the corrupt billionaires and people in power. But of course they'd never do that, because they're literally friends with them. Like Joe Rogan never in a million years would poke fun at Peter Thiel, and it's completely pathetic.
Barbara Walters gives you a big hug. They all loved you. They were all talking about how you're you might be conservative in your financial positions, but you're very liberal socially. They were talking about you in such a favorable light. The audience was cheering.
But anyways, another point I'd like to make here before the Rogan fanboys get their panties in a knot in the comments is that there's obviously a difference between the interview styles of Between Two Ferns and a long-term podcast like JRE. I mean, Between Two Ferns is anything but a podcast. If anything, it's more of like what inspired Sunday Conversations with Caleb Presley. But regardless of how different the shows are, it's still not an excuse for just how bad the Trump podcasts really were. Because it's like, if these guys are the professional comedians that they claim themselves to be, then you'd expect them to at least have a smidgen of jokes laced into the podcast. But believe it or not a single joke was found in the multiple hours of Joe Rogan's, Andrew Schultz's, or even Theo Von's podcast with these figures. So these guys are obviously podcasters first, who are merely grifting as stand-up comedians.
I would say the fact that I'm not leaning into one vertical means I get hate from every single group, right? And it's it's important to have these conversations. I'm positioned in a certain way. Obviously, we had Trump on the podcast. I've had 5 Democratic politicians on the podcast. I've had 1 Republican, but I'm viewed in this certain way because it's the easiest way to get clicks, and my name is clickability and whatever. I don't know, sorry.
He has one ability I don't have.
Yeah.
He sleeps. He can sleep. This guy goes on a beach and he lays down on one of those, 6 ounce, they weigh 6 ounces and you can't lift it. Yeah. They're meant for.
Another humiliating aspect of these Trump podcasts was that after they gave him their full support and helped him get elected, they immediately flip-flopped on Trump after seeing how he's now straight-up speedrunning thermonuclear war, protecting Bibi and the Epstein class, and doing major damage to Americans without any remorse. It's usually respectable and mature to be able to admit that they made a mistake with who they voted for, and change directions after realizing, but the fact that Trump was in office doing these same things for 4 years straight before going on to these podcasts just shows you that they're flip-flopping in order to save face more than anything else.
You have to decide which team are you on.
I hate that.
It's so stupid. I'm politically homeless. I've always been I've been politically homeless for a long time.
And don't get me wrong, Zach Galifianakis let Obama plug his policies in the short interview he did with him on Between Two Ferns too. But to this very day, Zach is actually fine with that, which he touched on in the Good Ones podcast he did a few weeks ago when asked if he felt implicated in helping show Obama in a positive light.
Do you feel at all implicated by having Obama on Between Two Ferns?
Implicated?
In so much as like that, to some people might be like, is this a real interview? What is this doing? Is this comedy or is this mess? In so much as it is a sort of abstract space of not clear lines of, is this entertainment or is this a political message?
It's tough now because the podcasters have become just ass kissers for the politicians, right? They don't challenge them. They just like, yeah, that's cool, right? And that I don't want to do. Like, we challenged Obama. We made it uncomfortable for him in a way that was done for comedic effects. Yes, so he could get his message off for healthcare. Yes, that was a thing that he was doing. But I first need to entertain people. That's my whole thing. And to see a goofy comedian with a very well-respected gentleman that's our president, I mean, it kind of writes itself already.
So funny enough, by roasting Obama and having him roast Zach back and act in an overall rude sort of way, it ironically made both Zach Galifianakis and Barack Obama more likable. And then in contrast, by huffing Trump's farts and praising him for whatever he had to say that day, it came off like it was a staged propaganda event pretending to be a natural conversation. I mean, just take a look at the way Akash Singh was doing everything he could to make Trump out to be this fantastic, genuine dude.
But with life, it takes a lot longer to find out the end
Come to
result.
fruition.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we said you're a great father up top. First thing you say is, I've got great kids. You didn't take credit. And then your entire answer, and I thought this was really cool, your entire answer is about how great your kids are. That was a very cool thing.
Thank you. That's very nice. I think I like this interview. I think it's right. And by the way, congratulations. I hear your show is crazy monster success.
We're doing pretty good. We're very we're interviewing presidents.
It's really good. And
so yeah, it was pretty satisfying hearing a guy like Zach Galifianakis go after these meatheads in 2 different podcasts, because this crew is everything wrong with modern day comedy. But do let me know your thoughts on this in the comments down below. Make sure to like and subscribe, and as always, thanks so much for watching.